Every prayer we make is rebellion. Every stand we take is rebellion. Every scar we wear is rebellion. Every song we share is rebellion. Power to our tender truth, power to our courage, power to our gleaming hearts, power to our wildest dreams, power to our truth. Wala nisan wirjanja, wala nisan druto, wala nis konyaglaeno, wala nisan wil truna, wala nisan wil. Power to our truth, power to our truth, power to our truth. Every song we share is rebellion.
Medicine Chief drew close. Come, listen. Until the day comes that the people of your islands once again go to the rivers, the mountains, the streams, the forests to pray, we will always be frightened of you, for you see with dead eyes, and your madness may be all it takes to tip the scales, mend what was broken, rekindle the children's fire. I am part of the sun, as my eyes are part of me. That I am part of the earth, my feet know perfectly. My blood is a part of the sea, and my breath is a part of the wind.
Trwy dwylo I dain, a nata yr enau. Llosg fynydd yn llo, sgi y llais. Ty'r agwyddialdeb dwys, yn tynnu o'r moment. Mae'r neidr yn poeri, yn symud trwy'r coed. Ac yn seler y cofion, mae cofion cyntadau yn rhannu gwirionedd, yn rhannu gorfoledd, yn rhannu mewn llwybr ymhellob dan do. Un o'r enau, ac enau dy dor.
We each carry a sorrow bundle as we travel our trail, and we bear witness to this sorrowing world. What happens when we come to feel that bearing witness is not enough? There is profound strength and compassion in observing with clarity, protecting from the edge, praying with intent, holding in hidden ways, biding time with patience, treading with integrity, being fiercely tender. But sometimes we may simply need to be fierce, to show up where the line is drawn across the ground, to place our voices or even our bodies into the fray, to stand up and say, that is enough. The line on the ground will be different for each of us, and no one should say for another where this must be drawn. But do we understand for ourselves where this line will be found? Perhaps if we're older, we might remember that when we were younger, this line would appear often bold and brightly painted, enticing us to dance along it. So we'd pull on our boots and without a moment's hesitation, we'd race out to that rebellious line and shake our fists or raise a shout or lie down in the road and generally make a nuisance of ourselves, because this was justice and this was freedom. And it felt so good to say, this is enough. But perhaps that was then and this is now, or perhaps we never found that vibrant line, or perhaps the sorrow bundle that we are carrying on our trail is really too much for us to cope with. Then let us sit quietly and stay here in this place of witnessing. Let us respect ourselves for observing and waiting and caring from afar. Because the truth is that our time will come, and when it does, we'll not be able to resist the pull of that defining line between when we will bear witness, holding our sorrow bundles, and when that is not enough. Here is a tale. We were used to sitting in a somber place of somber prayer. We were compelled to sit there by tradition and expectation and lack of free will. There was a great deal of somber song inside that place. The music that contained the somber songs could barely lift them up from the cold flagstones, and so they rolled around there, thick and dense, bruising our ankles and weighing down our souls. And even though our hearts might want to sing, our lips could only mouth heavy words, and there didn't seem sufficient air around us with which to loosen the grip of those crushing songs from around our voices. And there was certainly not enough room in that somber place in which to imagine more spacious songs, the sort that like to stretch and dance and breathe. And we were uncomfortable. Our clothes were too tight. Our hair was scraped rigidly across our scalps, and our ankles were, of course, battered by those somber songs. But week after month after year, we sat in that place, waiting for something to happen, hoping for our world to open up, wishing we might be able to breathe more air. Then one day something did occur, a change we could not have predicted, a transformation we would never have dared dream. The custodian of that somber place spoke a single choking phrase. His words were far heavier than stone and far crueler than words. Those women, he said, these women, these ungodly heathen women are condemned for eternal time, he spat, because those heathen women did not eat of our somber bread or drink of our somber blood. They are gone into oblivion, and they can no longer live in spirit or be loved in memory. They are completely and irretrievably lost. And we sat watching the spitting, raging, somber man. He seemed entirely blind to the host of women who were standing in ghosted forms behind his back and on either side. We didn't understand. These heathen women, gathered in their spirit forms, were radiant and strong. They were brilliant shards of fragmented light. They were glimmering possibilities. They were a sweet breath in that heavy place. they appeared to be neither condemned nor lost. And so we stood up and we felt brave and we reached our hands out towards the gleaming heathen spirit women, and then we smiled. That single small smile had the most astonishing effect. The air around us imploded. The door crashed back on its hinges, and the sunlight flooded into that somber place. We turned. We ignored the shouting, spitting, somber man, and we strode towards that open doorway. We tore off our tight clothes, and we loosened our rigid hair. And with 1,000 ghosted heathen women dancing at our heels, we ran out of that somber place into the glorious freedom of a heathen day. On the wet sand we are dancing. Waves are strong but not so high. Something in the way we're moving shows we're going to survive. Bring on the tears, for they won't drown us. Bring on the shadows, they won't catch us. Bring on the storm, it won't deter us. There's nothing that can stop us dancing now. Made mistakes, but we can't grieve them. Lost some treasures we won't find. We don't know why we are dancing. Must be rebellion on our mind. Bring on the rains, for they can't slow us. Bring on the darkness, it won't crush us. Bring on the night, for it can't bind us. There's nothing that can stop us dancing now. I went traveling some years ago to a difficult desert. And for a long time, I didn't think that there were seeds of mending in anything that I witnessed there. I struggled to find compassion that I thought would be tenaciously laced through the land by women's hands. Without doubt, it was there, sewn into communities and threaded across the borderlines, but my eyes weren't managing to see it. And once I was shocked into silence by the cruelty of words spoken by an older woman, leader of her group, even as we all gathered to share a spiritual ceremony. I felt I had been misguided by my own naivety. And then as we sat there in a ritual cave, the desert sun piercing the rock above with needles of light, an act of great kindness happened. It was not just kindness to me, but to an entire community. My neighbor in the circle leaned over and she placed a tiny embroidered pouch in my lap, and she said, "Perhaps you've been looking for this." And that tiny pouch was a doorway across a borderline, beyond cruel words, to the edge of a desert women's empowerment project, into deeper connection, and eventually to the journey of Bedouin sisters to my Dartmoor home. This sister had been living under occupation for her entire life. As a girl, she observed the conflict circling her community and the impact it had on their ability to envision a future. Her mother, who was not educated, somehow made sure her daughter went to school. And when this sister was a teenager, she observed these things, that change could only come if this situation, if women on both sides of the conflict would stand up and say, "No more." But the women in her community could not have the ability or the confidence to do this until they felt proud of themselves as women. And in order to respect themselves and understand more about the world, these women needed access to education. To afford education for themselves and their daughters, these women required money of their own. And since there were very limited opportunities for women in this community to be outside of the home, earning money, ways needed to be found for them to do this. And when she was 18, this sister did two very important things. She began teaching her mother, her grandmothers, and her aunts to read. And she set up a small traditional embroidery project where women in the community could gather and make things to sell. And 20 years later, girls are receiving education from the money. that is being earned by their mothers. The project receives international support, and a whole generation of women are being raised up and lifted out of their inability to envision a future. And this sister holds to the powerful belief that the long, slow progression towards these women finding strength and confidence will one day enable them to stand together with a single voice and say, no more to the conflict. She believes that the grandmothers, sisters, mothers and daughters, having made their slow rebellion through generations of women, will eventually tear those cruel borders down and change their world. I have one last story to share with you, and this one came about last year at the beginning of the war, a year before the war in Europe that just came. I was working with 50 women in Ukraine and Russia and Belarus, online of course, but we were working together for a year and we were creating a sisterhood. And then the war came. And this story is about what happened. It's called Sister Songs in Times of War. Over many years, a company of women who were curious about each other's different lands and souls and cultures decided to travel together for a while to see what else they might learn, to be wise about. Their shared journey was hard won. Not one of them found their way onto that path easily. They had to carve their footsteps out of unforgiving concrete and rusting iron and piles of careless violence that were littered through the lands. But they worked hard and they prayed deeply. And they trusted that the songs that they sang to each other would link across the thousands of uncertain miles which separated their scattered trails. And as each woman sang, she gazed into the eyes of her many distant sisters. She reached out her hands through the ethers, and she sent her drumbeats spinning magically, tenaciously, out across the lands. They started to make a cloth on which to catch the songs of their sisterhood. They sewed slowly over the winter, each woman threading a few words into the fabric. They didn't hurry to make this cloth. They felt they had plenty of time. And then a war came, and its impact was shocking. The souls of those women ran in circles. The bodies of some sisters needed to travel fast to safety. All their spirits were wounded and overwhelmed. No one could think about that cloth of songs for a long time. But then slowly they began to raise their eyes from the devastated ground immediately in front of them, and they reached their hands to their sisters through the ethers. They longed to gaze again into each other's eyes. But the way onto their shared path was even more precarious now. Crushing concrete and aggressive iron and purposeful violence all tangled into impassable mounds all along the trackways. They struggled to move forward. They could barely glimpse their sisters' anxious eyes. But yearning to connect with trembling hands, each woman lifted up her precious drum and began to sing. Small voices to start with, uncertain, nervous, wondering if and how they might be heard. Each stood alone. Each sang her heart out into this new world of greater separation. Each sister discovered this, that there is no mound of concrete, iron, or violence that has the power to stop tendrils of song from lacing through its cruel belly and emerging into freedom. There is no sister song that does not have the power to reach beyond the grasping claws of war and weave itself into a web of trust and truth and gentleness. And on that day, and on many days that followed, these traveling women with their different lands and souls and cultures sang their sisterhood across the boundaries of war. They kept connected. They remained passionate. They stayed kind. And they started to sew their cloth of songs again, working fast all through the night to get this symbol of their unity completed. And while the war raged through their lands, they threaded their songs of sisterhood into the fabric, using determined needles and courageous yarn. They sang and sewed and sang and sewed. They believed in each other. They believed in the cloth. And then it was done. Each stitch was in place, each piece of song tied lovingly into the whole. The cloth was big now, longer than they first imagined, long enough to wrap each woman like a comforting shawl, a protecting veil, sometimes a sacred shroud. We sewed for peace and truth and mercy, the women said together. We sang for peace and truth and mercy. They spoke gently as in turn they wore the cloth. We are glad for our sister songs in times of war. And they stood at the top of buildings, high above the streets, where they flew their beautiful cloth like a magnificent banner of hope. Power to our tender truth, power to our courage, power to our gleaming hearts, power to our wildest dreams, power to our truth.
atgoffa o'n clefyddau. Gorfodwn i ymroddi, ein ysbryd i ymrwymo ni. Ar o'r ein cyndadau, atgoffa ni o'n clefyddau, clefyddau'r galon, i'r wymo ni o fron i fron. Hey, oh, oh. Hey, oh, oh. Hey, oh, oh, oh. Hey, oh.
Does this man know how to pray? Does this man know how to pray? We don't know. He's not speaking. Hey, English! You know how to pray? Do you know how to pray? English! Do you know how to pray? Tears intervene. Begin to weep, not quite sure why. Do I know how to pray? Do I know how to pray? Well, take him down to the willows. Take him down to the willows by the lake. And there let's stand and gather and listen to this English pray. Fear infiltrates every part of me. Perhaps I know how to pray. I'm not sure I know how to pray with an audience of 15 people standing, staring at me, waiting to hear the words that I speak to the willows whom I love, but whom I'm not sure if I can find the words to tell them how much I love. Yeah, take him down to the lake. Take him down to the lake. And there, let's hear the words, let's feel the heart, let's know that this English knows how to pray. So the next morning we go down to the lake. And one of them begins a soft drum beat. It goes boom, 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 boom. Speak English, speak of your love. Speak English, speak of your love. Let us know, let the willows know that you love them. And I can't speak. Not a single word can pass my lips. I can't speak. In my heart, I feel my heart tearing apart because I do love the willows. I love the willow maidens, as they call them. I love the willow maidens. I wish to be able to give voice to the love that I have, but I can't find it. So after having stood there for about 20 minutes or so, they just turn away and they walk away. They leave me there with my tears and the willows. And the next morning, I'm ordered out of the place I'm staying. I'm told to go down to the lake again. And the same 15 people or so come down with me. And they stand there and wait, and the soft drum begins. And one of them says, Mac, speak to the willows. Let the willows know your heart. Pray to the willows. We wish to hear your voice. You do know how to pray. And this time I'm just weeping openly, and the tears are just splashing out of my eyes and falling down to the water of the lake, and I can't find the words to give voice to the love that I have. And I know that nothing matters really if it lives locked inside my body, but I can't bring it forward. Every day, for days, we did this. Every day I would be led down to the lake. Every day they would stand there and the soft drum going as they waited to hear me speak my love for the willows. And it was deeply painful. Eventually, words began to come. Eventually I managed to speak. Eventually I began to forget that there were these 15 people there watching and waiting. Eventually it was just me and the willows. And I did tell them how much I love them. So now, all these decades on, all these years and years past, I'm gathered with a group of friends up in the northeast part of the valley that we call Embercombe, that has been called Embercombe. We gather there, and we are in a ceremony of water, to do with water. And on my way into Embercombe, the valley, there on the road, just close by the gates of Embercombe, is this tiny little baby deer, crushed and broken, blood spilling some of its guts there on the floor, this tiny, sweet, darling little creature lying there. So I picked up the little being, and we took her into the ceremony and laid her on blue cloth. And then our people sang to her as we brought her into the ceremony, incorporated her inside what we were already doing, because she touched us. She touched us so much to see this little broken, tiny little being left on the road, disregarded, as the car would have swept by and just smashed this little body and left it there, crumpled, tiny little sweet being there on the road. She was held and she was loved and she was sung to. And then we buried her at the mouth of the roundhouse where we work. Because we have spoken for many years now how we walk over the bones of our ancestors. The little deer is one of our ancestors. Our ancestors are, of course, much more than human. We walk over the bones of our ancestors here. We walk over the bones of our ancestors. In some time to come, the place where the little baby deer is buried, we will walk over the bones of our little baby deer, and we will remember the pledge that we have made to our Mother Earth, that in the time that we have, we will do everything that we can to bring the prayers and the ceremonies, the recognition, and also the action, that we could once again become a people worthy of trust, a people who know what is beautiful, know that they are called to protect, know that they are called to stand for. And then, some days later, I drive to the valley of Embacombe through the back entrance, the southern, southwest entrance, and there, lying on the road, is a badger. That's also been hit by a car, smashed and broken on their car 50 meters from the rear entrance of Embacombe. So we take the badger in, and the badger is buried in the west of our stone circle, in the path over which we will walk. And we made prayers to the badger being, our ancestor, our relative, our family, like my Ojibwe friend who has no word for animal because they are only family. And then, just a few days ago, a little baby rabbit, and she is buried in the south of our circle. Somehow and for some reason, these little beings have come into our world, but we have not driven past them. We've not walked past them. We've gathered them and wrapped them in blue cloth, and we have brought them inside the circle of our love for this earth, inside the love for this land, inside the songs and the dances and the celebrations and the ceremonies that we will make. For the rabbits, the badger, the deer, the stoat, the weasel, the wild horses, the wild cattle that were once here, the auroch, the wolves that were once here, and going all the way back to the hippos in the Thames and the short-tusked elephant and all of those beings, and all of the forests that have covered our land and then have fallen and gone down, and all of the rivers that have formed and gone and come again, and all places of beauty in these islands of ours, for whom almost nobody, and there are indeed some, give attention to, pray with, love, and make ceremony. It was in my generation we were all going to India and Nepal and Afghanistan, and now it seems we're all going to South America, and we're all going everywhere we go. What of our rivers? What of our streams? What of our forests? What of our land buried under motorways and cities? What of this place which also once, not so very long ago, was considered to be an island of profound sacred importance? Or is that too dull and boring for us? We'd rather go somewhere rather more exotic. Until the day comes that the people of your islands once again go to the rivers and the mountains, the forests, the streams, the dullest and most boring part, she could have said, to your inner city areas, to all those abandoned brownfield sites, to every single little nook and corner of this massively overpopulated land, until the day comes that your people remember that their land also was once known to be sacred, that ceremonies were held. We will always be frightened of you, for you see with dead eyes, and your madness may be all it takes to tip the scales. Way.
We would like to share this song with you and invite you to sing this rebellion song. We will just start by sharing a line, and you sing the line back, and then we've got a counter bit to weave into it. But to have a sense of what it means for you, these lines, each of these lines, and maybe not all of them will, maybe different times in your life, the lines of this song would be more resonant for you. Every prayer we make is rebellion. Every stand we take is rebellion. Every scar we wear is rebellion. Every song we share is rebellion. So we'll start by singing a line and invite you to sing back.
You get that?
Every prayer we make is rebellion. You.
Every prayer we make is rebellion.
Every stand we take is rebellion.
Every stand we take is rebellion.
Every scar we wear is rebellion.
Every scar we wear is rebellion.
Every song we share is rebellion.
Every song we share is rebellion.
We are an act of rebellion. We are an act of rebellion. We are an act of rebellion. We are an act of rebellion. So that we are an act of rebellion. We're going to keep that going. Bethan's going to bring everyone on this side of the tent in with that. And we're going to, on this side of the tent, sing the main part of the chant all together. But if you can't remember the words, just, hum along. It's fine. You remember the word rebellion, so it doesn't matter about the other bit. Okay. Every prayer we make is rebellion.
We are an act of rebellion.
Every stand we take is rebellion.
We are an act of rebellion.
Every scar we wear is rebellion.
We are an act of rebellion.
Every song we share is rebellion.
We are an act of rebellion.
Every prayer we make is rebellion.
We are an act of rebellion.
Every stand we take is rebellion.
We are an act of rebellion.
Every scar we wear is rebellion.
We are an act of rebellion.
Every song we share is rebellion.
We are an act of rebellion.
So now let's sing the main chant together. And if you want to just do that counter line when you want to, you're welcome. But we sing the main chant together.
And you can sing it like you're really rebelling.
Yeah. Really feeling the prayers and the stands you take and the scars you wear, those scars you wear, every song you share, every prayer we make is rebellion. Every stand we take is rebellion. Every scar we wear is rebellion. Every song we share is rebellion.
We are an act of
Every
rebellion.
prayer we make is rebellion.
an act of
Every
rebellion.
stand we take is rebellion.
We are an act of
Every
rebellion.
scar we wear is rebellion.
We are an act of rebellion.
Every song
Till the day
we
comes.
share is rebellion.
We are
People
an
of
act
your
of
island.
Every
rebellion.
prayer we make is
Once again.
rebellion.
We are an act of
Every
rebellion.
Those are the
stand
rivers.
we take is
And the
rebellion.
We are an act of
Every
rebellion.
scar we wear
Will always
is
be
rebellion.
We are an act of rebellion.
Every song we share
see, we're
is
dead.
rebellion.
We are an act of
Every
rebellion.
prayer we make is rebellion.
We are an act of
Every
rebellion.
stand we take is rebellion.
We are an act of
Every
rebellion.
scar we wear is rebellion. Every song we share is rebellion.
We are an act of
rebellion.
If there was anything anyone would like to share, it would be wonderful to hear that. So if any kind of sharing, any kind of question, anything at all, would be really wonderful. And if not, then I'm sure something else will happen.
But we're relying on you. Thank you. Thank you for being the first. Yay.
Thank you for all the magic. Just a very simple question. I'd love to know the language that the lady to the left, I'm sorry I forgot the introductions, menopausal brain, but what language do you sing in?
Yeah, I'm singing in Welsh. Welsh.
Welsh.
Thank you so much. It was really beautiful. As a young person coming into this world, it's like really opening to be here in a space that's so sharing and open. When you sing that, like, we are an act of rebellion, what is something tangible that we can do on a like day-to-day personal level that kind of can help embody and personify what you're singing?
I think it's the simple things. We can make big acts of rebellion. We can stand on streets and we can protest and we can make a big noise and we can do those things, and they're incredibly valuable. And I'm so grateful there are people who put themselves on the line like this. But rebellion is also about a quiet rebellion of wanting change and doing your own small part of that that can actually be achievable and make that change. Because sometimes it's very easy to be disillusioned. It's to see lots of things we don't like happening in the world and to find it as a very heavy weight. So the reason for writing this song is to say there are many ways to do this rebellion. So not to be doing the normal things that are done by society is a rebellion. To make the choices that can make a difference is an act of rebellion. It's not just going down the line that we're all shown from cradle to grave, where we're expected to be, how we're meant to behave, what sort of jobs we should have, what sort of way we should behave. So that rebellion can be very, very simple. Every song. So sing a song in the morning as an act of rebellion. And when you walk with rebellion in your walk. To not accept that there is only one way that we need to be as a society, that there are so many paths.
Absolutely. And in my particular case, to begin to speak was an act of rebellion, because there's nothing that filled me with fear more than to speak. And why was that the case? Well, there are many different reasons, but it was the insistence from the people that taught me, indigenous people, who just said, you know, do you love? Well, actually, no, they didn't. They said, we know you love our Mother Earth. So why would you not bring your voice forward? And I would say, because I'm terrified. And they said, that's fine. And no, it's not fine. I'm terrified. Yeah, that's still fine. Be terrified and speak, you know. And as I've shared this story so many times, you know, trying to do anything I could to put them off, to try to say, ask me to do something different, something else. So I said to them, I said, you know, were I to stand on the stage and behind me the PowerPoint slide says Macartney and the title of the talk is On Behalf of Our Earth, let's say, and he stands there and he begins to weep. And then he never stops crying till the end of the 45 minutes that he's meant to be speaking. I said, what do you think about that? And they said, that would be amazing. Wow. Do it. And I'm just, you know. So I think it's an act of rebellion every time we meet the stories that we carry that in some way limit and crush and shrink us. It's the story that Carolyn was speaking about in many ways at the beginning of one half of our entire species, who's sort of, the beginning to stand and speak and be and live according to the things that we know are truly right and good and beautiful. In whatever way that happens for any one of us, the moment when we do that is an act of rebellion. A small act of kindness can be an act of rebellion.
Yeah.
A small act of kindness repeated throughout the day, small acts of kindness repeated, generosity, invitation, the assisting others, the listening can be an act of rebellion. Instead of for once insisting, if you know what I mean. So I don't wish in that way to diminish the larger things, because I think there's a place for all of them. But every single one can be an act of rebellion.
I have just a small thread of a tale from the tundra when we were there. Oh, it was nearly 10 years ago. We travel a lot to Siberia, and we were in the chum tent on the ice with our friends, Nenet's people, and our friend Tatiana, who's a singer for her people. And they're hugely oppressed by the culture, by the government, by the military, and somehow they hang on to the truth of themselves, but they lose, you know, it's hard to hang on to that when you're being squashed all the time. And on this night, there was a lot of talk about how hard it was for them on their lives and to keep their culture going, just to keep alive, just to face everything that they had coming to them. And one man was really angry, and he stood up and he said, why is it that we Nenets people, we just cry and sing? We just cry and sing. How can that change anything? And then all the time he was being very upset. Our friend Tatiana, the singer for her people, she just started a song really quietly. No one heard to start with. And then gradually the people around her heard the song, and then gradually more. And the man calmed down, sat down, and the whole tent listened. And then she sang this song to remind them why they are the people, why they are those people, why they are the people of that land, of those reindeer cultures, why that was important to remember. And that in itself was the most phenomenal act of rebellion, while all around them, everything was conspiring to take them away from the earth, to completely squash who they are and what they have treasured through all these long generations. So small acts of rebellion that reached a long way into everyone's hearts that night.
I would like to know how to tell a good story. The story you told us, because I know how to feel the silence, how to talk a lot, and but I don't know how to tell a good story.
How to tell a good story.
I did one stage. I remember when I finally submitted, in my case, to speaking. They said, just tell stories. Well, I said, I don't have any stories. I really believed I didn't have any stories. And gradually, I found them. How did I find them? Well, in the early days, my talks were very short. Like a couple of minutes or something like that. So I would say it's incredible how just walking towards your fear and beginning to share with small groups of people in situations where it's not too risky, and beginning to share something. And stories are there. We are looking right now at a multitude of stories. In each single person, multitudes of stories. Stories of how we've met whatever we've been given and found our way through it. Stories of feeling that we were less than we were. Stories of our stumbling, stories of our triumphs. They are always there. But you do have to sort of scrape aside and have a look. So I would say that they're there, they exist. And then, of course, as you begin to speak, you begin to see things that work, and you notice also that pauses are important. And then you notice also that the moment, in my case I should say, when before speaking, muttering the words, may I be worthy of the trust you show in me, meaning our Mother Earth, and do some kind of good enough job in sharing something. So in other words, it invites me to bring it from somewhere deep, in the same way that I would say when Bethan sings, we feel something. We don't, most of us, understand Welsh, but we feel it. So the same way when we sing, when we play music, there are always stories. So start from that position. I have stories. I just have to be brave enough to begin to fumble for a while and go through the feelings of not it working out too well, but keep going. Greatly underestimated, in my particular case and perhaps in others, is if you have the gift of perseverance. So you just don't give up. You never give up. You always move to the next step.
I have to say that one of the things about telling stories for me is getting older and gathering them. So the life experiences and the things that have happened to me. And now my children confidently tell me that I just keep telling the same old stories over and over again. And now they can't stop me. But you'll find all the stories. They're out there in the land and the people.
I think also that a story doesn't come to you fully formed in any way. It might be like a wisp of a thread floating past, and you just take the end of the thread and start to pull on it. And then you begin to realize there's more perhaps dream or mythology or expression of the earth all attached to that thread. But it's all starting to form the shape of something that has a reflection of yourself, that means something that can express something of your story. And then gradually maybe you have enough thread to start to braid it so it becomes more substantial. And finally, as you work with your stories, as you begin to get a sense of yourself within the whole weaving of mythology, you are part of that cloth. You become part of the loom of all our human imaginations. And you realize that everything that you're living and dreaming and imagining and creating into the story of your experience is part of this vast story of which we are all a part, we are all threads in it. And then that gives you confidence to know, just over there's another weaving happening, and we link into it. We are all connected. There is no separation, of course, between us all in our deep mythologies, our deep stories of the heart.
So I'm trying to form this question. Mac, you were speaking about how someone was talking to you and saying that they will be frightened of us until we learn to return to the mountains and the rivers and pray there. And I understand everybody on the stage to be carriers of British indigeneity and working to bring that sense and kind of do that work. But how can we possibly reach out kind of beyond the kind of people that would come to something like this, to the everyday people that are either worrying about how they're going to feed themselves and their family, or are so in the capitalist paradigm that they're just focused on the house, the car? Like, how do we get to those people and show them that this is what we really need and how we're going to fix not only like how we affect other countries, but the climate and biodiversity crisis we're in as well? I think like this is the key, right? Coming back into relationship with the land and seeing ourselves as guardians and stewards. It's a big question, but how do you see we could possibly do this?
It's a really big question, and I don't think it's been answered satisfactorily. Certainly won't be now. Honestly, I mean, there are moments. So I remember one business sent their health and safety guy to come and check out Embergoon to see if it was safe enough for this organisation to send their people. And this guy, whose name I always forget, but it was Robert or John or Dave or something, noticed the stone circle. So he swung round to me and he said, yeah, he said, is that real? I said, I don't know. I said, I think so. Last time I was there, I certainly felt those stones. He said, no. You know what I mean. I mean, is it old? I said, no, it's not old. It was constructed in 1999. I said, it's not real. I said, well, does it have to be old to be real? He said, well, yeah, it's just fake, isn't it? I said, well, I suppose it can be fake to some people, but it's real to me. He said, what's it mean anyway? So I was thinking, and I said, well, you know what, Dave? I'm one of those stones, and you're one of those stones, and everybody else is one of those stones, if you like. And the thing is that your organisation, caring for you as it does, will not send them until you've come and checked to make sure this place is okay. You have that level of expertise. You have that knowledge. You have all those things. So actually, I value the fact that you've come. And you will check it all out and you'll tell us where we need to improve. Now, I'm one of those songs, because I'm one of those stones, because that your organisation wants to send your people to us. But it can't do it without you. We all have a place. We all have a place. Every nation is represented by one stone. Every being is represented by one stone. Every gender by one stone. Everything is represented by those stones. And at a certain point, he suddenly turned around and he said, oh, yeah, I get that. So I have to confess it was a small step. But I do think when we spoke this out, every small act of kindness, any small act of generosity, many people have come to our land, and I'm sure to many other places, without really knowing quite what they were walking into. I remember when Kids Company was still alive in London, and all those young people from incredibly disadvantaged, harsh, hostile, really dangerous backgrounds, they couldn't bring those young people to us until they'd been with Kids Company for several years, to the point where they were not considered dangerous anymore, really. Well, when they came down These are young people who never left their particular little bit of London, let alone ever left London. So to come to a Devon Valley and with no spiritual religious kind of thing with them, other than they were full of life, and then to be welcomed in and really welcomed and seen and loved and respected, they did respond. And then for me, there's a magic happens, because you see, why I have some difficulty sometimes when, along with the various offerings we make, spiritual, religious, there's stuff that you have to believe. There was no word for belief in old dialect, Lakota and other indigenous cultures. No word for belief, because people didn't believe. They lived in it. So I think this is linked to when we can say to people, why do we love playing on the seashore? You know, why do we love people gather on the mountains on Dartmoor, on the Tors, to picnic and to play and to drink and whatever they do? Why do they do it? They love to feel themselves on that mountain. They love to feel the sunshine. They love to feel community. These are, I would say, the spiritual things. So when we normalize it and make it more ordinary, when we sit round and appreciate a meal together, we're right on the edges of ceremony and of a different way of thinking. And I think it, in that sense, it does provide us with pathways home.
So, does anyone have any other questions? Sorry,
I just want to add, so I was at Boomtown the other day. It's a different kind of festival. Very different. Different in all kinds of respects. One person I asked, you know, what do you think about Boomtown? He said, well, yeah. He said, if you want to get completely blasted off your head and drown in a sort of hedonistic fest of drugs and alcohol, that's the place to go. But I was there and I don't think there was anybody there above the age of about 28 or so, and there's 60,000 people. But I walked through there and I just see these young people, all these people, they love coming together. They love to come together with music and with dance. Well, isn't that what we have done forever? So when festival organizers begin to be brave and begin to sort of just nudge and steer, when all kinds of us just begin not to proselytize, as it were, but simply to begin to somehow acknowledge and to speak of and to sing about, maybe something really wonderful begins to happen.
So we do want to share one last song with you, but maybe we have a bit of time for one more question, if there is one.
Thank you. Sorry, gave the mic away too early, so I started the questions, I'll end it. I'm just curious, because your voice really blew my mind. I just would like to know what blew my mind. Can you speak more to the songs that you sang to us?
Yeah, they're both songs that I wrote, and both of them are exploring our relationship to ancestry and to the land. And the second song I sung is Aroren Kendatai, which means our ancestral warriors. And it's about remembering the power of the heart when we are in rebellion or in battle. So it's not remembering the power of the sword, but remembering the power of the heart, and that we are all one. And the first one is also about the ancestors, but it's about the listening to the messages they have to share with us our unique gifts and our unique ways of living in the world and of being in relationship with nature.
So we'll do a call and response song. Noibo Nani, that's sacred grandmothers. Noibo Wiro, sacred grandfathers. Askono Kajo. It's okay, it's response. You don't have to remember all this. Askono Kajo, which is sacred bones. Biwo Kajo, sacred breath of life. Dijira Kajo, sacred earth. Kruasa Kajo, sacred blood. And that's Proto-Celtic, 4,000 years. Bronze Age, language of these islands. And please do join in to sing out this prayer to the ancestors. Noi bonani, you.
Noi bonani.
Noi boero.
Noi boero.
Noi bonani.
Noi bonani.
Noi boero.
Noi boero.
Askono Kajo.
Kando kajo.
Be